Now, I know that at the start of this year, I committed to trying to stay positive about most of the things I talked about on this channel. If you don't have anything nice to say, you can be sure that hundreds of other people on the internet have said those not nice things. And so this isn't a snarky takedown or a rage-fueled angry review, it's a memorial. I'm in mourning. O wizarding world, I knew ye well. Here's to your memory. So I finally saw Fantastic Beasts: The Crimes of Grindelwald, and I've been very sad ever since. If you have yet to see the movie, then be warned I am going to go into light spoilers. But to be honest, you shouldn't go see the movie. None of the spoilers matter. Nothing matters anymore. To give you some context for the deep existential crisis you are now witnessing, I've been a hardcore Harry Potter fan since I was 8. I picked up the Philosopher's Stone in what I think was year 4, and like many people in my generation, I was instantly enchanted. The mystery novel setup was enchanting, the world gave you this sense of hidden wonder, and most importantly, the characters felt real and relatable. To a lot of us young nerds, they were our imaginary friends. We would open up the books and go on their adventures with them. It was magic. Just because it was all in your head doesn't mean it wasn't real. And for a long time, it seemed like that magic would last a lifetime. But Fantastic Beasts: The Crimes of Grindelwald is what happens when a writer who's used to writing books thicker than your average brick tries to write a 2-hour movie script. The skills are very different, and that shows from top to bottom in the final product. In the end, the movie doesn't feel like a story, it feels like a director trying to capture as many parts of a bullet point list of things that happen as possible. And that is evident throughout the film. Plot points that are set up as challenges are either totally forgotten or resolved so easily you wonder why they were even brought up to begin with. As an example, at the start of the movie, it's revealed that a travel ban has been placed on Newt the last few years, and as a result of that, he can't leave the UK. So, to leave the country, he has to go find a guy who has a portkey who will get him out of the UK without being detected. At the very last minute, that guy's like, "Cool, Newt, it'll cost you more money to get out the country, governor." Accents. And instead of this posing any problem at all for Newt, he just has the money. He hands it over and the problem is instantly resolved. There's no build-up or excitement or challenge for the characters, he just fixes the problem immediately. So why even have that problem to begin with? Then, later in the movie, there's a magic circus with a whole bunch of fantastic beasts being held captive, and none of them are ever seen again except for the magical teleporting tiger, who is the only one who's actually relevant to the plot. And even then, that magical teleporting tiger is tamed in a matter of seconds when Newt dangles a pair of keys in front of him. Here again, there's no real conflict. A problem arises, the tiger starts to terrorize Paris, and Newt, within a matter of seconds, fixes that problem. There's no real setup for his jingling the keys trick, and there's no excitement for the viewer because the problem is solved so quickly, there's no tension in the scene. And that's emblematic of the story in the whole movie. Problems arise and are instantly solved by pointing our wands into the ground in a circle. What it does give way too much time to are bloated expository monologues from its massive cast. Seriously, half of these people could have been totally cut out of the movie and there wouldn't be an issue. The focus should have been on Credence and how lost he feels in this wide wizarding world without a family. Instead, we get flashbacks and monologues from characters who ultimately don't impact any part of the story, Grindelwald's plot, or even Credence's final decision. The character of Lita was great in concept, but we never spent enough time with the character to give any of her revelations any real meaning, or her sacrifice any emotional impact. She and the murdery Frenchman could have been totally cut out of the movie, saving us an hour of exposition and giving us more time with the characters we actually care about. Instead, we get this group of a half-dozen characters who all have dark and emotional backstories that are explored through flashbacks and monologues where they pretty much turn to the camera and tell you exactly what their deal is. It feels absurd And speaking of things in the movie that are great in concept, the story does actually have some pretty good ideas. Ideas that it never gives enough time to and are never thoroughly explored. First off, we've got Grindlewald, who is meant to show how a charismatic person in a broken and segregated system can make their point of view, as radical as it is, seem logical. These kinds of people can make what is wrong seem very right, and they bring to life that quote from the original Harry Potter books, where people have to choose between what is right and what is easy. And that's reflected in the character of Queenie and how she turns through the movie. She loves Jacob and she wants to marry him, but the wizarding world doesn't allow for this. So instead of trying to petition for Muggle wizard rights, she chooses the easy path. The path where Grindelwald kills his way to the top and lets her do whatever she wants. If that seems like a giant leap, it's because it is. There are two scenes, the one where she wants to marry Jacob and complains about it to Grindelwald, and then the one where she immediately joins his side. We don't see any transition, she just goes from one point of view to the other. And that's the same thing for the wizards that Grindelwald convinces to join his side at the end of the movie. He shows them World War II and how terrible things are going to happen unless the Muggles are subjugated. And everyone in that crowd buys into that, even though a more logical response would be to just have the powerful wizards help the Muggles so that they don't blow themselves up. And then he somehow manages to convince Credence that he's not telling him bold-faced lies when that's literally all he did to him in the first movie. So the idea of a charismatic person like Grindelwald being able to twist people's desires against them is great. They never spend enough time on him to show that. For a movie called The Crimes of Grindelwald, we spend a remarkably small amount of time with Grindelwald. And he commits like 2 crimes. Now maybe if the movie hadn't spent so much time focusing on tertiary characters who didn't really impact the story, or on massive exposition dumps, then we'd have a more cohesive story where the ideas behind Grindelwald really impacted. But that's not what we get. Instead, this movie has been aptly compared to the Star Wars prequels. And I think that's a very fair comparison. Both try to tell and aim for deep, politically motivated stories, but they get lost in the details and the nitty-gritty. They care more about the lore of the world and the history of the characters than they do about actually telling a good story. In the end, we loved the magic, but the Harry Potter series wouldn't have been the same without its great characters. And we barely get any semblance of character in The Crimes of Grindelwald. But, much like the Star Wars prequels, at least the soundtrack is very good. In the end, the movie's biggest crime of Grindelwald is that it's pretty much a filmed version of a wiki page. You may be wondering why the shots of me drinking this butterbeer have alternated. It's because I am fantastically bad at sculling beer. Victoria Bitter. It tastes like piss in your mouth.